a look at the King in Black series. So guys, this is a series that I've been wanting to review for quite a bit of time, but I wasn't able to find time to it, and now that we're finally here, I'm so glad that we can dive into it because this is one of the best written series from Marvel, and I have sung its praises enough when I reviewed the Absolute Carnage storyline, which was also written by the same people, by Donny Cates and with Ryan Stegman doing the brilliant artwork. It's one of the best symbiote storylines, and guys, whoever thought Thanos was the big bad, trust me, Knull is insanely powerful. And I think one of the best things that Sony did with Venom Last Dance was not nerfing Knull, and they just gave him the cameo and just showed glimpses of what his really true power is, because he is truly menacing and truly all powerful. And I don't know if they'll ever revisit that, but they potentially could if they recast and maybe visit it in a different storyline. But King in Black is an amazing storyline that would be amazing to see on the big screens if it ever took place. So guys, like I said, this follows up right after the Absolute Carnage storyline where Eddie killed Cletus Cassidy, who had kind of like the god Carnage, because he had absorbed all the other symbiotes and their codexes, effectively reawakening Knull from his slumber. Having reawoken Knull, now he is coming back to reclaim his kingdom, which is to fight everything that the light touches, and he's starting his conquest by heading towards Earth. So before I get started with the story, let me just give you a brief about Knull. So at the dawn of time, before even light struck out, there was just Knull in the darkness, which was his kingdom, which was effectively space. But then there was light and there was the first Celestials, and of course Knull could not tolerate that. So right then and there he went and beheaded the first Celestial all by himself. For that he was banished into the far corners of space, which was still his kingdom, but still he was thrown quite a bit away into the other corner of space. And using that beheaded head of the Celestial, he forged the Necro Sword and again waged war with all the Celestials, and again they banished him to into the depths of the abyss, and it was at this point that he got separated from the Necro Sword, which then ended up in the hands of Gore the God Butcher. But when he was there in the depths of the void, he realized he could combine the abyss with other creatures and then use them as a medium to control them. And with this discovery, he essentially became the hive mind, so where he could sit and through his other through the creatures that has been bonded with this abyss, he could literally be everywhere and nowhere all at once, quite literally like a god. And it was during that time when he started expanding his conquest all across the universe to reclaim his kingdom. He came to Earth there as well to claim it as one of the other millions of planets that exist in space. But then it was Thor who was there, who fought his creatures, and his lightning sent a shock and ripple so far into the hive mind that it severed his connection with all the other symbiotes, and all the other symbiotes who had experienced life and valued life, basically everything that Knull was against, they turned against him and trapped him on Clintar, all of them on him, making it into a big planet which is essentially just a prison where he's in a deep slumber. But after the events of Absolute Carnage, he has reawoken and now he is coming back. Before we get further in this video, be sure to hit the like button, share it with your friends. You can subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more such videos, guys. Take a look at the first issue, guys. It's not one of the best covers. I mean, it's pretty iconic and well recognized, but I don't think it's the best of artworks. But it basically comprises of all the characters that are involved in the storyline. You have Knull, you have Venom, you have Spider-Man, you have the Avengers and the mutants, which are basically everyone who is fighting against Knull as he comes. And much like the Absolute Carnage issue 1, this is a pretty thick issue. It has a lot of content in this. And by the way, guys, I got this entire set from Epic King Comics. I'll put the link in the description below. You can check their set out. They've got some amazing collection of comics, single issues, signed comics, and even slabbed CGC comics. So the story starts with Eddie looking into the city as he can feel Knull coming towards Earth. So he gathers all the heroes, which is the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, every hero on planet Earth, as he knows that there is a Omega universal level threat that is heading their way. So he's summoning in all the heroes, and while he's doing that, he also picks up his son Dylan Brock, and he puts him away in a safety cell so that he's not engaged in the fight or he's not endangered, as any parent would be concerned. And in the Avengers Mountain, everyone is strategizing, laying up traps and sensors so that they know when Knull comes in, but they have no idea about the magnitude of force that is heading towards them. As you can see here, it's just coming, it's just pouring and pouring, and none of their defenses can barely even make a dent in Knull's horde and army. As you can see here, it's madness. It is pure madness. And guys, if you want to get a glimpse of an idea of what this actually is like, I would suggest you look at the gameplay of Web of Shadows Spider-Man, and even more so Spider-Man 2 from the PS5 game, because it was pure madness, and this is like 100 times that. So it is insane about how the entire planet is just attacked by like a black swarm of symbiote army. And then Venom goes to the Knull. Well, this is kind of like the hive that Cletus Cassidy had created during the Absolute Carnage storyline. So it's kind of like a mini hive mind. So he goes there to connect with Knull in hopes to stop him. The idea initially being that he could try to connect with everyone, becoming the hive mind, but that doesn't really work very well. And as you can see here, Knull didn't just come straight to us. Before that, he also took control of all the other Celestials who he initially had a beef with. And now there is like nullified Celestials that is part of his army that are on Earth now. And we have Knull over here who just calmly says, I am going to kill your world. Give me the one I'm looking for and the death will be swift and painless. Nothing, no grand exclamation, just stating his demands and saying that you're gonna die anyways. It's just about how you die. And every one of them are thinking that, and Captain America says that we will not go down. And then they bring in Sentry. Oh man, when I read this the first time, this was intense because Sentry comes in and it looks like he's putting up a fight, but Knull is literally older than the universe. He's so much stronger. He rips Void in half. He absorbs the Void. So Sentry is dead. And guys, now that Thunderbolts has come out, you can clearly imagine that if they ever implemented Knull, Bob's dead. Bob is most certainly dead. He will just absorb the Void. And he starts just covering up the whole planet in the symbiote. We got a glimpse of this in that Spider-Man 2 game when we see the whole planet is covered in the symbiote over here, and you can just imagine how strong Knull is. And like I said, Thor is the only one with his lightning abilities who had a chance against Knull, but he is not yet on Earth. He is off-world. In the meantime, Storm is trying to put up an effort, but it's just too feeble against Knull. Not enough that can actually stop him or even get his attention. So Venom decides to just go straight to into the lion's den and contacts Knull, and you can see a big hand that is reaching for him. But Knull says he's not the Brock that he's interested in. He's interested in his son Dylan Brock, and he throws Eddie without his symbiote off of the 100 or 200 feet rooftop. Yeah, as you can see, he just rips the symbiote off of Eddie and just drops him from the building. Moving on to issue 2 over here. So this picks up where we left off in issue 1, chapter 2, Fall. Very subtle. Yeah. And Eddie Brock just slams into a car. I mean, he was thrown off, or he was dropped from like 100 or 200 feet high building or wherever Knull was standing. And he is barely alive, but you know, his back is brutally shattered. I mean, obviously. And Knull is wondering how hard is it to kill one human being. And then he just... By this time, all the other Avengers have fallen. Like you can see, you have Cyclops, you have Captain America. The thing, they're all been nullified as they have been taken over by his horde. And Spidey just swings away with Eddie while the Human Torch puts up a distraction. Even though all these symbiotes are not that vulnerable to fire, because actually Knull's earliest creations like Venom are symbiotes that were weak to sound and fire. His later creations were not all that weak to it. And then he takes him to another layer, which is like the Fantastic Four laboratory, where they're trying to keep Eddie alive. But even Jane Foster, the She-Thor or the Lady Thor, is saying that he won't survive. And he goes to pick up Eddie's son Dylan. And at the base you have, you know, the Thinker or the Maker. Sorry, I keep getting confused. The Maker, you have Blade, Magneto, Reed Richards, and Black Panther. They're all trying to come up with something. First they're trying to keep Eddie alive, and secondly they're trying to figure out a way to stop Knull and his horde. And Namor shows up. But then Tony Stark steps up with an idea, saying that he's going to need one of those dragons and try bonding with them and use that as a connection to possibly fight Knull, because at this point they're still not sure what will effectively help them fight Knull. And in that pursuit, Iron Man is able to capture a dragon symbiote, and the plan is to bring it to Eddie and then use it through him. But that isn't very effective, and this is where you see Dylan's display of power. And this is actually why Knull wants Dylan, because he has a hint and trace of his powers. But you know, in this effort, Eddie dies. Yeah, Eddie Brock's dead apparently. Moving on to issue 3, which is one of my most favorite covers in this series with Thor fighting Knull, because Thor is the only one who actually has a good chance of fighting in a 1v1 against Knull. And I think Thor is severely undermined in movies because his power is really like much stronger than what we have seen. We've only seen a very small glimpse of how strong he really is. So I don't know. I would really love to see a big screen Thor versus Knull someday. What do you guys think? As you see, chapter 3, Thunder. So these guys are not going for subtle titles, they're naming it exactly what it is. So yeah, Eddie is dead, things are damn grim, no one has any viable solution barring Dylan, who could hurt Knull because he has abilities that are kind of like him but just very faint. So it's all they've got going at this point, and they decide to get him to that chair and try to use him to somehow fight Knull. And with this ability he's also able to ward off the symbiotes. Essentially that's how he re-releases Captain America, and this is how Knull even is finally able to sense where Dylan is, which is the one he is looking for. And just as he's about to reach and grab Dylan, then he feels the lightning of Thor, and that's something that actually hurt him. This is where Thor arrives. This is an amazing scene, kind of reminds me of that scene from Infinity War, but this would just be a whole lot more cooler if you ever saw this. And you can see Thor and Knull going for a duel. And it's not an easy battle because Knull is equally strong, but Thor is the only one who has a good fighting chance against him. And everyone else is having a tough time fighting the hordes, and the hordes that Knull is now possessing with his nullified symbiotes. And Thor gives one big whack with his hammer, just causing Knull's lower jaw to fall off, break off completely. And then he summons his, I think this is the Necro Sword if I'm not wrong, yeah. And he just stabs Thor in the chest from the back. Iron Man, using the dragon that he had caught in the previous issue, tries to put up a fight, and with a controlled celestial of his own, a nullified celestial that's in his control. I really don't know the terms of these characters at this point, but yeah, it's kind of like he's got a nullified celestial under his control to fight against Knull's horde, but that's not doing much again because he's going straight for Dylan, and in the meantime the Silver Surfer is on his way to the battle as well. Going on to issue 4, as you see, this is mostly about the mutants over here, all on this cover. Chapter 4 being Lightning. Going on to issue 4, Dylan. Knull clearly has Dylan and is telling him that he should join him and how he can destroy everything. And meanwhile there's a telepath that is trying to calm Dylan down because he's still just a kid, telling him to focus in and just stall Knull a little bit more. And Dylan tries to use his powers to burn Knull, which causes a little bit of a distraction but doesn't do much more than that, as you can see. And it just causes enough distraction to release a few of their friends like Doctor Strange so that they can use their magic to fight against Knull. And that releases a few more allies, but Knull quickly recovers from all of that. And we see that the telepath who was talking to Dylan was Jean Grey, and she tries to see through Knull's mind to see if there's anything that they can use, any weakness that he's hiding. But she just sees how ancient and how strong he really is, that it's quite frankly he's invulnerable. He has no or zero weaknesses, but the only time that he was defeated was when there was a warrior of light that actually bonded with the host and fought against him. And that is what is repeating right now. There is the force of light that is trying to come to bond with the champion, but it is not able to break through the barrier of Knull as he is covering the entire planet. And this is where the Silver Surfer comes into play. He, with his speed and his ability, just takes the force of light and breaks in through the barrier and into the earth, carrying the light force. And initially he thinks that he is the champion, but then the light or the Enigma force has already chosen a champion, and that champion is none other than Eddie Brock. Finally, we are at issue 5, which is another favorite cover of mine in this issue because it's really awesome. With this, looks a bit like Knull, like Venom with the Necro Sword, and it's just really cool. Silver Surfer, who's now arrived at the scene with the battle, converts his board into a sword to fight against Knull. And so have all the other heroes that have been recovered using Dylan's help. They all rush to Silver Surfer's aid to fight against Knull. And finally, Eddie Brock, who has bonded now with the Enigma Force, which is giving us cosmic Venom, finally shows up to the scene. And this looks so cool. The glowing spider symbol, the steam coming out of his eyes, and Knull mocks him, thinking that I've already killed Eddie Brock, so it shouldn't be difficult for me to do it again. But with the cosmic powers, Venom now summons the Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, and Norraden's board turned sword, and then he just smashes them in together, forming a new awesome battle axe, as you see over here. So this is pretty insane. And Knull, for the first time, feels fear, or felt fear from after a very long time, and is running away from Eddie, putting all his hordes against him. But Venom is just with great ease fighting and thwarting off everyone until he just destroys even the Necro Sword and then grabs Knull by the throat. And again, Knull tries to use a Celestial, but then Venom does the same thing that Knull did at the very first of his conquest. He just beheaded the nullified Celestial. And then he takes Knull to the same point as we saw in the first issue and holds him off the building and tells him how he just felt so hopelessly and desperately alone when Knull ripped him of his symbiote. And he does the same thing and drops Knull off the building. But that doesn't still kill Knull, so Venom just takes Knull, shoots out of the planet from all his barrier controlling, and just takes him all the way till the sun, where he burns to death, as you can see here. But Knull tells that there's a part of him that's still there in Eddie's son, in Dylan, and through that he will still relive, and Venom knows this, which is why he flies back to Earth. And now that Knull is dead, the rest of the horde stops fighting, so Eddie just goes straight towards his son, and as he comes down, the battle axe is left there. You can see Norrinrad and Thor summoning their individual weapons, which they get back. Eddie is back on Earth with all the symbiotes, detaching and just giving back their normalcy, and with sunlight coming back into their planet. He heads straight for Dylan and then takes that piece of Knull that's there within him and burns it. And then the Celestial Force, or the Enigma Force, leaves him, telling that now he has a new role, and Venom, which is bonded back to him, just says that now he's the king in the black, with all the other hordes coming back, just swarming around him. That was the overview, guy. Definitely issue 3 and issue 5 is my most favorite in this whole storyline, but I just love the overall storyline. It's just so cool seeing how they fought Knull, and just in these 5 issues, the build up of Knull, how hard it was to even put a stand against him. It was just so incredibly awesome to watch, and by the end, Eddie becomes the new king in black, and then we see in the later issues that Dylan then bonds with Venom and he becomes the new Venom. And now I'm not all that interested with the Venom storyline because I don't think there's nothing really good in recent times, but this is a series I would definitely recommend you guys pick up. If you can find even a trade paperback of this, I would definitely suggest you pick it up and read it because it is really, really good, guys. Let me know your thoughts about this series in the comments below, and I will catch you guys next time.